Thank you so much for joining the Modern CFO Show podcast. It is an absolute pleasure to have you on the show today. I was wondering if you can kindly just introduce yourself, tell us a little bit more about your current role and all the good things you do at NextGen.
Right. Tom Shultz. I'm here in North Carolina in the United States. And I started as a CFO in 1990, but the company I was working for in 2006 was sold to another company, and that's when became an accidental fractional CFO. So I've been a fractional CFO since 2006, back before it was fashionable, and actually back before they used to call it fractional CFO. At the time they were calling it either contract CFO or part-time CFO.
Right.
So I've been doing it for about 18 or so years, and I'm still doing it. So NextGen CFO came along. I was out there kind of lonely. There weren't too many people, and I ran into someone else doing what I was doing, and we ran into a couple other people, and we said, well, let's just gather together and form an entity. So we created NextGen CFO. That was enabled us to do a website, and that was 2010. And that now we're up to 19 of us. So there's 19 NextGen CFOs running around North Carolina.
Well, what I'd like to know is, you, like you said, you kind of started off doing fractional work before it was a thing, before it was cool. And you've been doing this for over 20 years, like you said. What is it that
Yep.
makes fractional work more appealing in 2025, both for CFOs themselves and also for clients?
Yes. Well, the interesting thing is I can speak for myself, but I can also speak for probably hundreds of would-be fractional CFOs that have reached out and connected with me over the last year and a half since my book came out. So I wrote my book, So You Want to Be a Fractional CFO, because a lot of people were just calling me and saying, "Hey, I hear you're a fractional CFO. I'm interested in this career, and can you tell me what it's all about?" And so what I was doing is spending a lot of time telling people what it was all about. And I said, I'm just going to give them a book so that next time they ask me that question, I'll just say, read the book and then we'll talk.
Yeah, yeah.
And so, why is it appealing for a CFO or someone director of finance, something like that? It's appealing because there's number one, flexibility. Number two, you can create your own hours, your own capacity. We tend to end up with people that are not at the beginning of their careers, but toward the end.
Hmm.
And so someone's that's been working as a CFO for, 20, 30 years, they've probably been working, 50, 60-hour weeks, and they're maybe a little burned out. And they say, you know what, I'm ready to retire, but I'm not ready to retire.
Mm.
Mentally, I'm still wanting to stay engaged. So what it is a golden opportunity for people to stay part-time, stay engaged, and yet not be overloaded with 50, 60-hour work weeks. So
Mm.
it's a good transition to retirement, I think. It's also one common reason too is that I get people coming is they might be located in the city, and they have kids that don't want to move, their wife doesn't want to move, or spouse, I should say, because
Mm.
it could be a woman, and they just don't want to move. And so good CFO positions pop up, but not necessarily in the city you want.
Mm.
If you're in your city. So what people come to me and say, if I do this part-time CFO thing, I don't have to uh, move. And so that really helps attract some people as well to the fractional CFO. So
Mm.
from the client perspective, it just makes too much sense. And so many, as every company hires a fractional CFO, they tell their friends, "Oh, it's been so good for me." There are so many companies that are in that anywhere from 3 million US to 80 million US range that do not have a full-time CFO or do not have a CFO. They
Hmm.
a lot of times have a controller, and the owner of the company is wearing the CFO hat. And that's works out okay for a time, but eventually it keeps their focus away from growing the business. The bigger they get, the harder it is for them to also keep the CFO stuff going.
Yeah.
Um, so anyway,
Uh,
long answer.
Yeah, no, exactly that. But I think you've hit the nail on the head. I think it's so beneficial for the businesses because, like I said, 80 million businesses don't have a full-time
Yeah,
CFO. Maybe they
yeah,
only need a CFO 1 day a week, and you've got a
correct.
CFO maybe that's built up a huge network of, you know, different businesses, different connections. Maybe wants to go into retirement. Hey, maybe why not pick up three, four clients instead of doing your full 80 hours a week kind of work, you know? It's a win-win on
Right.
both sides. I wanted to ask you a quick question. Maybe someone out there has thought about doing fractional work, but you are essentially leaving a guaranteed salary to almost start your own business. How can people make the first steps as a fractional CFO to win really good customers at the start?
Right. So the first thing before anything is I think you need to establish a solid financial base, a personal financial base. So I always recommend you have at least 6 months worth of expenses so that if you quit your job, you don't have to immediately get another paycheck. You can get by until you get to that point. Some people get lucky and fill themselves up pretty quickly, and some take a while. So that's the first thing I would recommend. The second thing is for someone who's thinking about wanting to be a fractional CFO, or maybe they've got a date out there. Maybe they say, all right, 6 months from now, I'm going into business on my own. Well,
Mhm.
that's 6 months of opportunity to lay the groundwork. So obviously, you don't want to post on LinkedIn that you're looking for fractional CFO opportunities because your employer is probably going to see
Right.
that. But what you can do is you have relationships as a CFO with people who are maybe your banker, your CPA, your insurance broker, your lawyer, and I would recommend you reach out to them just to say, hey, let's talk. Either let's do a Zoom or let's go out to lunch if they're local, and let's just catch up and get acquainted. You
Mhm.
basically build a relationship. It's kind of in sales, that's networking 101. You build your relationship, and you build your relationship not by telling them all about what you can do and can you give me business. You build it by, getting together and saying, give me some background, tell me about your family, things like that. And,
Mhm.
and then at the end, you drop it on them that, hey, I'm thinking at some point about being a fractional CFO. What do you think?
Mm.
And so you've established these relationships, um, very low key, going in. And so then day one, when you quit your other job and go into it, now you circle back around and say, hey, remember when we met 3 months ago?
Yeah.
Well, I've gone ahead and pulled the trigger, and now here I am. I'm in the business. Do you have anything, or can you start looking for something for me?
Right.
And, I characterize it as planting seeds. You plant the seeds and you water them and fertilize them. And fractional CFO opportunities are not just laying around there waiting to be gathered. They pop up. There's usually a need that pops up. And the more people you have out there looking out for you for an opportunity, the more you're going to be able to do it. But at any rate, I would also like to suggest a separate way, which is if you're leaving a paycheck and you don't have that 6 months of expenses, maybe you
Mhm.
only got 2 or 3 months, there are fractional CFO firms out there that you can join. So I know in the UK, there's a very large one called CFO Center.
Yes,
Um,
correct.
I'm familiar with it, and they've got lots of them. So if you can get in with a CFO firm that's already established, that probably also has a marketing pipeline or sales pipeline,
Yeah.
and that could help you get your first clients faster because you're leveraging off of someone that's already in the business.
Yeah, I think that's probably something that a lot of people don't even think about as well, that it's not always going to start your own business becoming self-employed. There's opportunities out there to join existing firms where you can do that fractional work and still get the benefits, essentially.
Correct.
Um,
More now today than there were 5 years ago.
Yeah,
Every
exactly.
year there's more. Yep.
Yeah, and I think you did hit the nail on the head as well about the personal relationships because I think I know that talking about COVID is pretty much old news now, but I think that was really a year where everyone was on Zooms. It was all about video calling, and I think that old school kind of way of face-to-face businesses and face-to-face networking is really coming back around now. People are really asking for it still, so I think it's like you said, it's a great way to build up that pipeline. What's it like working with a client for the first time, Tom? So, you're a fractional CFO. That
Yep.
business can be anywhere in its life cycle. Maybe the business you're working for is a startup. Maybe they've got acquisitions going on. They could need a lot of help. What is it you need to do to be effective on that day one?
Right. Well, you have to be practiced, I think, a little bit at being in. But frankly, it's not much different than being a full-time CFO coming in for your first day of work. The first day you're going to go in, and the main thing you want to do is find out what are the top priorities. So, in many cases, you get called in to work as a fractional CFO for a reason. There's
Right.
a pain point or a event coming up or something. So, if someone if I'm hired on as a client to a company and they ask me, the reason is we've got a 6 months from now we're going to sell to someone,
Hmm.
and so we just need to have our books in order and everything cleaned up before then. So that's obviously my first approach is
Right.
to work on that. It could be a startup. That's exactly true. Although, frankly, fractional CFOs don't work too much with pure startups unless they're really going after, funding. So,
Right.
in the professional investors, technology or venture-backed companies. So, that's where we might get involved on a startup basis. But there's just so many ways that a CFO can impact a business, and that first day is finding out what do they have and what do they need. And I usually go around and meet all the other players in the company, and figure out the systems and just dive into it. But it's first of all, I got to put together a priority list, and
Right.
usually the priority list is driven first by the company owner or CEO.
So it's really about speaking with the CEO to be effective on day one in knowing what the next 3 months are going to look like, what the priorities are, what needs to be done
Correct.
to make the most of your time.
Correct.
When a client is gearing up to sell, I know this is something in our previous conversations that you've had quite a bit of experience in.
Yeah.
As a CFO, what's your playbook to get those financials in order, and what can often be overlooked in that process, in your experience?
Well, the first thing obviously is to get the existing financials in order. You want to basically make it, if you're not being audited, you want to have it audit worthy. So everything on the balance sheet account needs to have or on the balance sheet needs to have a schedule that ties out to it. That's just basic accounting, basic controllership. A lot of companies don't have that.
Mm,
So that's the first place I would start. The second place, which is a little bit forgotten, and especially by company owners who are not working with a professional assistance, is the EBITDA add backs. But what is EBITDA? And in the professional, business brokerage arena, there are things called EBITDA add backs. So, for instance, if EBITDA is $1 million, but we're going to add back stuff that's going to go away, not like the country club dues for the owner.
right.
Obviously, the purchasing company is not going to pay those.
Mhm.
Or if the owner has 6 relatives on the payroll that live in another country that really don't work for the company, well, we'll add those back too. There are numerous areas where you're going to want to add back. So that $1 million of EBITDA might be 1 million too. And it's
Right.
got a big multiplier effect, times the EBITDA multiple. So you want to really have your EBITDA add backs identified,
Mhm.
and you want to make sure you have enough supporting material to justify those. Because if I'm a purchasing company, I'm going to come in and I'm going to be very skeptical and thorough in examining the EBITDA add backs because, of course, I don't want to overpay for the company.
I see. So it's just about making sure that you get those ad backs in line, and like you said, they can often be overlooked. So make sure you know exactly what they are, so the numbers are
Right.
correct when you go to look at it.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to want to maximize what they get for it, and that's one of the values we can add is putting those forth and supporting them. Actually, during COVID, there were people that were adding back for COVID. So, for instance, if their sales were off 20% during 2020, they would try to normalize that. They would say, "All right, we're going to add back some
Ah, right. I
profit
see.
to account for the fact that it was a one-time thing and it went away." Legal fees that are related to the acquisition, you shouldn't, those will go away after the company is purchased. So there's a lot of little areas that can be addressed in that.
And there's a question kind of off topic to this a little bit, but is negotiation side, is that more down to the CEO? Does the CFO, say for example that they want the most of their money, they're talking about, they're going to normalize that year of COVID.
Right.
When you push back on that, is that more from the CFO or is that more from the CEO to go in there and negotiate those things?
Well, the CEO is usually negotiating, or maybe they've got an investment advisor they're working with, and so they'll push back. But I'll be right behind them. So if there's a pushback that comes to the company,
Mhm.
then I'm, in the position to push back the other way
Right.
to them, so to support it. So, but my ideal is hopefully that I've documented and supported it well enough that there is not going to be pushback or
Yeah.
very minimal pushback. So,
So
but
everyone's
usually
going
I
to know
don't
what
get
they're getting
involved.
into.
Yeah, I don't usually get involved in the negotiations. My negotiations more if we're financing. Well, that's for selling, but if we're buying a company and we're financing it, then I'm the one negotiating with the banks
Right.
to help finance that.
Make sure the numbers are in order. Got you. In
Yeah,
in 30 years of your experience of, being a CFO, working in finance, you've worked with hundreds of different companies. What is the best way to build those long-lasting relationships with clients for years to come? Obviously, we've talked about, you know, becoming face to face, getting those referrals in. In your experience, what's really worked for you?
right. Well, I'm speaking to you from experience. I'm just starting my 15th year as a part-time CFO for the company I'm sitting in the office of right now. So it's worked pretty well. The when we talk about calling people trusted advisors, if you're going to stay long term, you're going to become a trusted advisor to
Mhm.
the company owner. And this company, the owner actually asks my permission to take money out of the company. I mean, he
Right.
trusts my, knowing the numbers are proper, that he's going to ask my permission. A lot of companies aren't that way. The
Mm.
owner just says, "Write me a check," and then you figure out how to deal with it. But and so you maintain a long-term relationship by basically doing just the basic CFO block and tackling. But the CFO basic block and tackling is not controllership. It's not, doing the books right. It's not, just basic accounting. It's doing the strategic things.
Mhm.
It's being part of a strategic planning group, part of the senior leadership. One of my secret weapons also for going in and establishing a long-term relationship is to get to know the other members of the leadership team. So the chief marketing officer, the chief salesperson, chief of manufacturing or distribution, whatever type of company it is,
Mhm.
you there's maybe three or four or five people that are surrounded the CEO, and those are key players. And if I become the internal consultant to them, so they can come to me and ask me questions, and I can give them advice, then all of a sudden I becomes a little bit sort of indispensable or at least
Mhm.
comfortable. They get used to having me around. And so that's kind of, I do that for the owner for sure. And it doesn't happen overnight. You have to just build that over time. You have to get FaceTime, whether it's virtually or in person. You got to FaceTime with the owner just one on
Mm.
one, and the more you do that, the more you build your credibility and the trust they have in you.
I
So
guess it's not just about being indispensable to the CEO. It's, marketing managers, sales managers, they might get used to talking to you once a week, and all of a sudden not
right,
having you there is going to be a big burden on their day or their week.
right, right, and they get used to having me here, and it's interesting. Sometimes I'm here one day a week, and people find out that I'm just here one day a week, and they can't believe it. They thought I was a full-time CFO here.
Yeah. They're probably
Um,
used to having you around all of the time that, they probably do
yeah,
picture you as
correct. And
part of the wider family.
they schedule meetings on the day I'm here. If I need to be in a meeting, they'll schedule it for the day I'm here. So it works
Isn't
out
that
good.
good?
Yeah.
I did also want to talk a little bit more about your book. So obviously, so you want to become
Okay.
a fractional CFO. Again, I'd recommend this to anyone who has any questions about becoming a CFO, wants to learn a little bit more. All of the answers are in here. I did just want to ask, what is it that made you go ahead and write this book? Because obviously it's done amazing numbers, amazing reviews. But what is it for you that you're so proud of about making this?
Well, I've I've wanted to write a book since the early days, 2006. I said, after a few years, I said, no one's got a roadmap out there. There's no one else that I can lean on to figure out how this is done. So I was kind of wanting to put a roadmap out there for people. And then, of course, that was 10 years before I finally got around to writing it. But it was just a opportunity to give back. The more fractional CFOs that were out there, the more client companies were hiring them, and it seemed like we could never get ahead of the game. So we had, just in our little part of North Carolina, we had grown to, at the time we were like 16 CFOs working for us.
Mhm.
And yet every time we put a new CFO on, they would be full in 3 to 6 months. And then all of a sudden it's like, hey, these were clients that we didn't even know about.
Mm.
And we just put someone on with a leap of faith and they're full. But now we got to bring another one on because we have no capacity to sell for the next person or next company that comes along.
Right.
And so I wanted to put it out there. My tagline on LinkedIn, I say I want to grow fractional CFO from 5,000 to 50,000 people in the next 5 years. And some people challenge that. And where does the data come from? There's really no good data deposit for number of fractional CFOs. So I just wanted to 10x it because I believe there are so many companies out there that would benefit from a fractional CFO that as soon as they're out there and
Mhm.
they find out about it, then I think they'll be looking for one. And if, we need to keep ahead of the curve, I think, with getting more fractional CFOs into the marketplace
Right.
to accommodate that demand. Um,
I suppose it's almost like scaling a version of you, right? It's like, there's only one of you. You can only have that good
right.
one-to-one chat with so many people. Now you scaled that in a book to reach thousands
Right.
more people, essentially.
Yeah, hopefully. Hopefully. Yeah. Well, I used to go on Amazon too and type in fractional CFO to see what was out there, and nothing ever came up. It's like,
Yeah.
someone needs to do it. And it was a little bit of a challenge too. I had a friend that was writing a book at the same time, and she told me about this program that I ended up getting involved in that was, the publisher that it actually took me through and held my hand through the 1 year process of writing that book. That's how
Wow.
long it took. I think it takes, or it took me before it got published, but it worked out good,
Yeah,
I
well,
think.
that's why it's so effective, right? It wasn't made overnight. It's, years of internal
Correct.
hard work that needs to go onto paper for people to read.
And
So, yeah.
and I also, I read a book, I can't remember the author's name, but it was called Fractional Leadership. And so it
Right.
was about generic fractional. And I just got bogged down trying to read it. There were a lot of stats and a lot of little snippet stories, but it just took me a long time to get through. So I determined when I wrote my book that it would be a nice, easy read with lots of stories. And I've had people comment to me that, hey, I read it over a weekend. Another person said, yeah, I read it start to finish in 5 hours. So, I mean, they must have been a speed reader, but I did make it so that it was an easy read. It's not, you're not going to get bogged down in like a textbook.
Well, this is it. I think, like, especially in this day and age, our attention span is, I don't know, maybe talking about myself here, but our attention spans have definitely dropped with technology. So if someone can pick up that book and get all the information they need in 5, 6 hours, then it's even better. They're more likely to finish it,
Right.
exactly the way it goes. Um,
Right. And
I-
and keep in mind that's not yeah yeah just I'll keep in mind that it's not a blueprint for how to become one. I mean there's more to it than that. I just wanted to primarily unveil what is it like to be a fractional CFO. And there's some ideas about doing it doing it yourself, but more than anything, people just need to decide, is this for me?
mm,
And then if they decide it's for me, then we can go to phase two, which is how.
right.
And I haven't written the book on that yet, but there are, coaches out there. There's people, myself included, that will help you um, go through that process and get to be a fractional CFO.
I see. So it's not how to do it. It's more you're thinking about it. Here's the thoughts you may have. Here's the stories that I've got for you to decide if it's for you, you know. Right, I see.
Correct.
And
Correct.
actually, I wanted to
Yeah.
to finish off on a quick fire round. I just wanted to ask, while we're on the subject, what is the best book that you've ever read? You're not allowed to say your own, of course, but this could
Okay.
be fictional or non-fictional, just the best book you've ever read.
The best book I read, I've got a soft spot in my heart for it because my father, who has long since passed away, he was an accountant. And so I kind of ended up following in his footsteps. But he gave me a book when I was in college, and it's called Managing for Results by Peter Drucker.
Right.
It's an old dog-eared copy that I have. I'm sure they've reprinted it over the years. It basically did a nice, beautiful overview of how to run a company properly, and some of the principles that are in there are very good to this day even. And so I periodically go back and read it, but that kind of set me from my undergrad psychology degree to saying, I want to go get my MBA and get into finance and business. And so that was an inflection point for me. And it was just a good, solid read that convinced me to kind of alter my career path at that point
So that was
back in
the
college. So
stepping stone for
I
you
still have a
to.
sauce. Plus my dad gave, yeah, plus I still have the inside cover of the book, that my father signed his name in it and put the year. And so that's kind of a soft spot for me.
Nice. Yeah, like a really sentimental one that kind of set up your career yourself.
Correct. Yeah.
Nice. What's your favorite software that you're using these days if you have one? It could be software, a nice tool that you're using online to help with your kind of day-to-day work.
Yeah. Yeah. Interestingly, I've been through a lot of softwares over the year, but I still keep coming back to Excel.
Yeah.
As far as what do you use the most? What's your default? I almost always default to Excel. And, I'm definitely, I'm working in a lot of different ERP systems and all my clients. I've gotten to know Power BI a little bit. And and I'm no expert by any stretch, but then I've also starting to use ChatGPT, and that's
Mhm.
starting to get a little bit fun because actually it's helping me in my writing more than anything. If you can uh, do a rough draft and summarize, and kind of do a kickstart. I think a lot of writing going forward is going to be started with Chat GPT, but like I said, my favorite still, I fall back to Excel.
It's I guess it's the finance leaders kind of like bread and butter software. It's the always the go-to. The new kids on the block will always come around, but the Excel will always kind of be there
Yeah,
for you. Especially in
yeah,
the trend of like, there's ERP softwares, there's, financing softwares, there's new ones that pop up every day. I think, it's easily
yeah,
accessible for everyone.
yeah.
Is there like one emerging trend in your industry that you're excited about at the moment for 2025? Is there, new things coming up in the CFO world that you're spotting that you're quite excited about these days?
Well, there's so many new things. It's hard to really pinpoint just one, but let me give you one for the fractional CFO world is that I think that the fractional CFO world is fracturing. So what I mean is that we're creating specialty niches more.
Right.
Niches, niches. I'm old school. I still say niches. Uh, so there are companies, fractional CFO firms that target small businesses, less than $1 million in sales. There is a fractional CFO firm that targets online consultants. There, and then there's a lot of people like myself that I'm more of the part-time CFO that has the regular CFO job description for a 100 employee company, and I just do it on a part-time basis. There's other fractional CFOs that target in private equity groups and going in and helping with that, helping sell the company. I mean, it's fracturing into so many places, and what that's doing is it's creating a lot of opportunity.
Mhm.
So someone who's a fractional CFO coming into the market that has an expertise in an area, they might be able to load themselves up with business in that area, just staying in that area of expertise they're in. There's a guy I'm talking to. He's in medical clinics, and that's what he's been doing all his life. Well, now instead of working for this big practice, now he can go work for individual little clinics on a part-time basis and use
Right.
that expertise that'll help them. So I think that's going to help fuel the growth of fractional CFO is the kind of carving out of all these little specialty uh, areas
So
within
it's
the
basically rather than, that CFO, the CFO world being, one CFO for 100 different companies, you've got these niche entities, these niche companies, niche individuals
yes,
that are targeting specific industries
yes,
to kind of master that.
yeah,
Which of course is great for the fractional workers as well. Like you said in that example with that gentleman in the medical industry, working for the same company for 10 years is amazing. But it gets to a point where, hey, if I can do this for 10 different companies, keeps me on
right,
my toes a bit more, keeps things a bit fresh, and it's
exactly.
a win-win all around.
And I also like, as a trend, as just a general CFO, is all this automation, all this, it kind of gets lumped into AI, but it's more than AI. There's tools now that, can bring in like AP automation is a lifesaver for companies I'm working with because you can't find a good AP person anymore.
Yeah,
I mean, they're hard to find, they're expensive, and if you can take accounts payable and you're getting 100 invoices a day dumped into your inbox and let the automation tool take that and put it in your system for you, well, gosh, that's just wonderful. And all of that because it's the trend is that it's getting harder and harder to attract people into these accounting roles, into these accounting clerical roles. And
mhm.
so I kind of like that automation trend, which I think AI is a part of. Um,
And
that's really
I think obviously we're only at the very start of that cycle as well. You was around in the 90s and early 2000s when it was all manual. Then you got to more software, and now we're going into that AI territory, which is still pretty much brand new. So who knows where that's going to go in the next few
right.
years?
Yeah.
Um,
Interesting little tidbit that when I started in 2006, LinkedIn had just started.
right.
So LinkedIn, I couldn't use LinkedIn. I mean, it wasn't, and And I think by the time I was in it for a year, they were up to their millionth, millionth user.
They should
And now
probably
they're
give you
over
a
a
badge
million.
somewhere for like, being one of the day one members somewhere on your LinkedIn. Maybe you should
I
ask them for
I
that.
did. I didn't get it. I wasn't a day one member, but I think I did. They do send you badges when you're at an anniversary. I think I had 17. So
Wow.
that's and it's changed a lot too over the years.
Well, exactly so. Yeah, I mean, even that. Look where that was 10 years ago to now. So we're going to see the
Right.
exact same with some of these new softwares too. Um,
Absolutely.
just as a bit of a parting talk, I'd love for you to just quickly tell the viewers, hey, we've read the book. We want to know a little bit more. Maybe people want to come out and just ask for a bit of advice. What's the best way to contact you? LinkedIn or email?
Well, they can contact me however is most comfortable to them. LinkedIn is where I'm probably most active. My contact information on LinkedIn points you to my email address. The Also I have a website. It's called CFO2fractional.com. CFOTO fractional.com. So it's pretty easy to remember, I hope, if you're thinking about becoming a fractional CFO and you're, CFO to fractional.com. And
Perfect. I'll link that in the description as well for anyone who
right,
wants to reach out to you directly.
okay.
More importantly, I just wanted to say thank you so much for joining us, Tom. I really do appreciate your time and effort, and I wish you the very best of luck for the weekend ahead. Make sure you have a good one.
Thank you. Thank you,
Nice one.
Zach. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Cheers, Tom. See you
All right,
later.
cheers. Bye.